welcome back to the Draftkings Life Podcast. I'm Jason Jones, Senior Recruitment Marketing Specialist.
And I'm Meg Powers, Talent Acquisition Associate.
Season 2 of the podcast, and we're back like the NFL. Things are buzzing here at Draftkings, even working from home. How are you, Meg? What's new?
I'm good. Not too much. I'm super excited to be back in action. We even have some fancy new podcast microphones. Graham just pointed them out. I'm excited to hear who we have on this week, Season 2. I'm ready to go.
Our first guest of Season 2 is big. I wish we had sound effects because he needs it, but we have the Chief People Officer. We have the Chief People Officer of Draftkings. Please introduce yourself, Graham.
I'm Graham Walters. I'm the Chief People Officer. Happy to be here. I've heard so many good things, and from listening to the podcast in the past, I know you guys absolutely kill us every time. So looking forward to sounding incredible, although I don't have a microphone.
You sound great.
Super excited to have you on. Today we're going to be running through some questions to get to know more about your Draftkings experience. So I like to start these calls out by first just asking, how are you doing working from home? I know you just gave us an update, but another one would be great.
I'm doing well. I mean, this has obviously been challenging for everybody to be working from home, but I always like to look at the positives of it. So I don't think that I have had the opportunity to spend this much time with my kids and my family ever. So it's been awesome. And my wife and I had our fourth child over the course of COVID as well. So Congrats. I'm sure she is mostly happy that I'm home and able to help her with all the kids too. So overall, I'd say I'm in a good spot. And it's been, while challenging, I think somewhat from a work perspective, I think overall I have to take all the good with the bad.
Very nice. Very nice. So what is a Chief People Officer and what do you do at Draftkings?
Chief People Officer is the fancy way of saying head of HR. So what I do is, lead all of the functions from talent acquisition, talent management, real estate, facilities, total rewards, people operations, really from inclusion, equity, and belonging from across the company, and make sure that we have a cohesive strategy to put the right people in the right spots so the company can execute on its mission and vision.
Nice. That's awesome.
How many times have you said that?
I feel like I practice every once in a while. People do ask, like, what is it? What does that mean? What is a Chief People Officer? That's a thing? I'm like, I'll explain it a different way.
So I hear you started your career in finance. So how did you end up in HR, people's team?
I feel like most people that eventually make it into HR, that was not what they went to school for and not what they intended to do, and it just happened to fall into place. So yes, I started out my career as a mutual fund accountant, which was less than ideal, not quite the best job I've ever had, and just happened to one day. This was a while ago. My wife, I guess she was I don't even think we were just my girlfriend at that point in time, found a job posting on Craigslist. Which is also a weird way, I think, to post jobs now. Probably was then too. But for a job in executive compensation consulting. And that was how I originally made it into HR. Focus first in compensation and executive compensation, then transition from there. So by chance.
Okay.
That's cool. So from Craigslist to executive.
it just, it's maybe not the most normal path.
Follow your dream.
It worked.
No, that's great. So we've seen in movies and on television the perception of HR. I always go back to The Office, and yes, those are fictional. But what is your philosophy towards leading the people team at Draftkings?
Yeah, I mean, it's always funny to hear what people's perceptions are. I think there's a broad range of perceptions, probably depending on the movie that you're watching or show. My general approach to HR is to be just focused, practical, pragmatic. Like, we're here because we are problem solvers. We're here to help enable the business to get done what they want to do. There are a range of issues when we work in an industry such as ours, where our people are our top asset, where you want to make sure you can get the right people, put them in the right spot, and make sure we're successful. So my approach is to make sure that we're just another partner that the company has to work with. Yes, there is a compliance aspect to it, but mainly our job is to make sure that the company is successful by putting people in the right places to succeed.
Nice.
For sure.
That's awesome.
So you've been at Draftkings, what was it, 5 years now? Coming up on 5
years? A little over five. Yeah.
Wow.
Long time.
Yeah, I mean that is long for Draftkings, but we're getting there. I'm over 2 years now. So, can you describe for us what Draftkings was like when you started back in the summer of 2015 versus present day 2020?
So the summer of 2015 was also another year where we were had our name plastered literally everywhere. That was back when daily fantasy sports was in this major boom. A similar time where it felt like we were on a rocket ship, and coming into the business, we were much smaller. So we were just over 100 people. And we were all on one floor, basically in Boston, with a small office in New York. So I remember coming in and starting, I was sharing an office with the former head of HR at that point in time. I think there were at least 2 or 3 of us in there, and it was a cramped, small spot. But honestly, it was great because it really allowed us the opportunity to meet with each other and get to know everybody across the company. Felt like just a small, tight-knit, dedicated group. And it was a really cool point in time because I think you could see directly, not that you can't now, but you could really see directly who and what and how people were getting their jobs done on a daily basis. So it provided just a different level of intimacy.
Nice. And so how does that compare to the current state of the company in 2020?
Well, current state, we're just scattered everywhere. But I'd say that the culture still remains and holds strong. I think that degree of commitment, focus, execution still holds. You still ask people what the best part of working at Draftkings is. It's always about the people. It's still about the people. I think people here really enjoy the fact that they work with a really highly talented, committed, and focused group that's going to make us successful. And I think the competitiveness is just unmatched. So,
couldn't agree more. So with that, Graham, how would you describe the culture at Draftkings, especially now with the majority of the company working remotely?
Yeah, I mean, the remote piece is interesting. I think it's important for us now that we're over probably around 6 months fully remote right now. I think that it's important for us to continue to scale that, to continue to make sure that we hold true to what's important to us at the company and how we operate. So the same things I was just saying. So that I think that there's a degree of commitment, dedication, ownership, entrepreneurialism, and focus that really separates us from other companies and other companies I've ever worked for. I think there's also, go back to the things that make us unique. It does go back to, the things that we value, whether it's being highly analytical, being a place where we're extremely flat and focused on best idea wins, a company where there's this ownership and builders mentality where everybody owns and is focused on whatever their role is and how it contributes to the broader mission and vision and ability to understand how they contribute to the company's success. So I'd say pull all those things together, and that's how I describe it.
Nice. So it feels like things are constantly changing in 2020. So as the Chief People Officer, how are you and the people team coming up with new ideas to support and adapt to those changes?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think that what we try and do is a handful of things. We want to listen and ask and do research and figure out, what do we think people need? What are people asking for? And what are other companies doing? Especially when it comes to making sure that people are as productive and as effective as possible, in these work from home times. I think those are the best ways to go about doing it. Wanting to make sure that you probably don't know everything. You're not going to know how everybody feels. So you want to be able to understand what specifically is a challenge for people, what is going well for some groups, what's not going well, how can you apply those lessons across the company, and how do you make sure, like the pulse survey that we just sent out asking about these exact questions, we want to make sure we have an opportunity for people to tell us. We're not always going to know. So I think that's where employee participation is extremely important. We have a lot of employees who, have come up with a lot of the ideas that we're providing. So we want to make sure that just like we're able to, it's the right amount of push and pull, that we're able to both ask and receive information that will help us make working from home as I think in general people are very excited and appreciate the work from home, but make sure, there are going to be those areas of drag, of friction, and we're able to improve those. So want to make sure we listen.
Okay.
For sure. I miss the office. Some days it's good to be home, I feel like, and get stuff done. And then other times I wish I could just go tap on Jonesy and, ask him a question. But
that's one of the areas that, that's one of the top things is like the shoulder tap. How do we do the remote shoulder tap?
It's a Slack.
We got to figure that one out.
Hey,
Yeah.
Hey, do you have a second? Or just surprise Zooms are always very fun.
Yeah. So Graham, at DraftKings, we know you as a beer connoisseur. So can you tell us about a close connection with a local brewery that you have?
Sure. Yeah. I guess another pit stop in my career on the way to this it wasn't just from mutual fund accountant into HR. I also wanted to open up a brewery at one point in time. So spent a lot of time actually in that same job as a consultant, discovering a passion for beer and then starting home brewing. And then with one of the guys I worked with, putting together a business plan and eventually going through the process to open up a brewery. So it really started up in my garage, but now there's a brewery out in Norwood called Castle Island Brewing Company. So while I am no longer there, no longer part of the brewery, I am an avid consumer and still best friends. So love the brewery. They're doing great things, and always just an interesting detour in your career when you're able to start up something like that.
Yeah, shout out.
Yeah. Well, it just shows that life isn't like linear, so you can you have these micro pit stops along the way as you achieve your career goals. That's really cool.
I think just like anything else, the more you do, the more you learn, the more you'll create connections. And even though there might be areas where well, wait, why does beer and HR mix? I think that what you're actually doing is creating more of those connections in your mind between seemingly dissimilar things that make you better when you go back to whatever it is that you're actually doing. So being able to just put together a business plan and understand company strategy and how we're going to execute with consumers, I think directly applies back now to the position that I'm in to be able to support that from an HR perspective with this company.
For sure. How did you guys come up with the name? Did you come up with
it was a long and painful process, and I swear. So my friend, his name's Adam, is the owner. He lived in Southie at the time, so South Boston. And in South Boston, and he's right down the street, down the street from Castle Island, which is, you guys are all aware, but for everybody else who isn't, is like this little park and fort that's in South Boston. So I want to say it took us forever. We were trying to come up with names for the longest time. And I think Castle Island was actually one of the first ones that came up and we immediately dismissed. And then for a while it was going to be Critical Mass Brewing Company. But come to find out there were a couple others that were similarly named. And then we eventually looped back to Castle Island and said, why didn't we just pick this in the first place? So
it's a great name.
Had to know.
Great name. And so Graham, where do you see the greater HR function moving towards in the next 5 to 10 years? And how does it evolve to keep up with the space, to keep up with the pace of business and tech?
Another great question. I think that, if I knew everything that was going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years, then, I should go and, play the horses or something. I'm not the world's best gambler. I can't predict the future, despite working at the company. There's one of those areas where I think that what we will do is make sure as companies make this transition, who exactly knows how COVID is going to play out and what the exact long-term effects are going to be. But we do know it's going to be a continuation of broader flexibility in terms of work, especially for work that we do, where your physical location means less and your work output and productivity mean more. So I think it just reinforces HR's role in identifying talent and supporting the internal systems and processes to make sure that we're able to develop that talent, reduce the internal friction around the process about how work gets done and how we communicate internally, and make sure that there's still a community, although we may not be physically co-located, that we are co-located culturally.
Definitely. So Draftkings has been recognized as a top employer. In your opinion, what makes us stand out from other top companies in that same category?
I think it's a tough talent market. It's a tough place to be competitive with a lot of other great companies who I think we can learn from. I think the things that we're doing that differentiate ourselves, where we're trying to execute and be leaders. Number one, I'd say that you can't replace a couple of things about the company. One, you can't replace the people. Like, I'll go back to the fact that everyone that I've ever worked with here says the top thing to work, or the best part about working at DraftKings, is their coworkers. That's a tough thing to replace. That's not something that HR does. A lot of things like that make a great company to work for are the opportunity, the people, your ability to have an impact in the organization and the future of the company. If you looked forward for what we see, where we see the company growing, the opportunities are limitless. Our role as HR to make that better is to make sure that there are opportunities to achieve what your own personal vision is and what the company's vision is to be successful, so that we have those programs and processes to make everybody successful. It also goes back to making sure that everybody's heard and there's an opportunity to be inclusive. So we go back to inclusion, equity, and belonging. This is an area where I think that we're only going to continue gaining momentum. I think if you listen to Jason, obviously this is a area of high commitment for the company. It's an area for us to really differentiate ourselves as we go forward as well, where there is a true commitment. I think there's an opportunity as we focus on internal career paths and internal mobility, as we've expanded our geographic footprint, and we've expanded the products that we're working on and the opportunities there from a career perspective to gain increased scope, or whether that's getting promoted or working on different types of products. I think the opportunity there from a career perspective is continuing to increase on a daily basis. And then just the opportunities we have as the company grows to participate in that success, where you can say, you know what, I worked there. I still go back to the fact that I feel like for DraftKings, I always give the analogy where it feels like Amazon selling books, like that's DraftKings and DFS. And as we go forward, the opportunity where we're bringing on sportsbook and iGaming and everything else, I view us as being a leader in the online real money gaming space in the future, and obviously expanding beyond that. So that's tough to match.
For sure. Yeah, it still feels like, even though we've grown so much as a company, as a business, it's like the beginning of growing into this industry. So that's definitely something I'll talk about with candidates, and something I thought about when I was first joining as well. Great. So my next question, what is your favorite moment at DraftKings so far?
Oh, that's a tough one, because I feel like every year is almost like a different company, a different point in the company's life cycle. I mean, the most recent one, going public, is pretty cool. I think everybody has a lot to be proud of, and something I feel like almost all of us can relate to across the company, where we're able to join this new, much larger company and go public all at the same time. To me, that's really cool.
Especially during a pandemic, like how often
exactly.
can you say that?
Like, it was such a unique confluence of circumstances. I don't know. That's a tough one to match. I feel like there've been a handful, but that would probably be, of the more recent things, one of the top ones.
Nice.
Definitely. Okay. Last question before we move on to our last little 2-minute drill section of the podcast. So, what's one piece of advice that you have for a candidate who's looking to join DraftKings?
Be authentic, be yourself, be curious, want to learn, want to understand how you fit, make sure it's the right job. Like, I think that the people that are most interested, and the people that we're most interested, are those that are authentic to themselves, and that know what they're looking for. So find the right job, find the fit, and be yourself.
Definitely.
Like it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for going through all those with us, Graham. Next, we are going to move on to this lightning round of questions. So this season, we want to try to make it a little bit more competitive and see how many questions guests can get through. So we're going to put you through the gauntlet a little bit. So, answer them with as quick as you can, but, make sure that you're putting some thought into it. Okay, so Jonesy's going to start a timer for us. Let us know whenever you're ready.
Good.
Okay. Where were you born?
Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Nice. Favorite company perk?
It was definitely the cold brew, although I haven't had it in a while.
That's it. Best restaurant in Massachusetts?
For sentimental reasons, I'm going to go with Gaslight in South End. Always loved it with my wife. So
it's right down the street from me.
I love it.
Perfect.
Love it. Favorite quarantine hobby?
Golf. I have golfed a ton this summer.
I heard you're getting better.
It was tough to get worse. So,
Favorite mobile app?
I guess the thing I most use is probably texting and mail, but I play Hearthstone a lot. So,
favorite live concert you've been to or seen?
I went to U2 recently. That one was pretty good. Relatively recently.
Dogs or cats?
Always dogs.
Last book you read?
The last book I read, I want to say that the last book I read was Art of War by Sun Tzu. I went back to reference that. Another one that George loves, actually. George Hodder.
No surprise. That's how this is like. About 45 seconds left. Are IPAs overrated?
IPAs? I think generally speaking, most people think it. I still love them. No. No.
Favorite season?
Fall.
Same. Last movie you enjoyed?
Oh, God. Last movie I enjoyed. I mean, I'm just watching a ton of kids' movies these days. What was that newest Disney one? That one was pretty good.
Frozen?
Not Frozen, but Frozen
Mulan
2 was really good. I have not watched the new Mulan one yet. I guess I'm too cheap. No, there's one that came out on Disney Plus that was, God, I'm forgetting on the name.
Is that the timer or your phone?
That's my landline.
That's timer, actually.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have to
God, what's the name of that movie?
I don't
I gotta
know.
look it up now.
Yeah,
All I watch now is kids movies.
Yeah.
the kids are gonna have to come on the podcast next time.
Seriously, I'll bring them down.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for going through that. You're the first one to go through it with speed in mind, I guess. So I'll give you a B+.
All right, that's probably fair. It's probably onward.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I didn't hear that was good. Okay.
Yes.
Great.
So yes, Graham, thank you so much for today. And so we're going to close out the podcast by asking you, what's a motto or mantra that you live by every day?
So my parents always told me, this is like an old Nietzsche quote, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I always go by that one.
I think Kelly Clarkson said something similar. So
we have a lot in common, me and Kelly. I do think it's true, whether it's in your personal life or your business life. If you can make it through something, you'll learn from it and you can only do better. So
I like that a lot. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today as we kick off season 2 of the Draftkings Life podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media at Draftkings Life. And Meg and I have some exciting news besides our fancy podcast mics. You can now find this amazing podcast on all major podcast platforms: Apple, Spotify, Google. We got you. So be sure to download, listen, and even throw us a 5-star rating. So in the meantime, be safe, be kind, and take care.